Life for a medieval peasant, born into difficult circumstances and humble origins, was shaped directly by the soil they cultivated. Their existence began in a small, smoky, thatched dwelling, with a thin layer of dirt as the floor, a life where neither fate nor fortune offered security. Baptism occurred soon after birth, not primarily as a ceremony, but as a defense against the ever-present threat of early death. From the earliest age, they were immersed in a demanding cycle of labor and survival. Their bread was often coarse and lacking, and the lingering smoke from the hearth was a constant reminder of their simple surroundings. This is the raw, unfiltered reality of peasant life during the medieval period. Your journey begins in a world where dust is the earth's breath and smoke fills the air. Imagine a dimly lit cottage where your mother holds you on a floor of packed earth, slightly softened by straw and animal bedding. Your first cries are a faint sound in the dominant sounds of survival. This is the stark truth of being born in the challenging Middle Ages, a time when the simple confines of a cradle offered a preview of the grave's severity. As a peasant, you are inherently tied to the land, destined for a life of continuous hard work. There are no grand celebrations, only a swift baptism, an urgent race against the looming specter of death from the very start. The knowledge passed down through your community, accumulated over generations, is more than just old tales. It is the essential foundation of survival. Baptism serves a purpose beyond a mere ritual, acting as a safeguard against an early demise. The priest's hurried actions, his sacred words combined with your family's heartfelt prayers, weave a fabric of hope against the deep-seated fear for the fate of an unbaptized soul. In this precarious existence, every breath is a triumph over mortality, pushing you towards a life marked by resilience and driven by necessity. The hut where you first breathe is your entire world, a shield against indifference. Constructed from woven branches coated in mud and clay, its walls offer minimal protection from the weather. The thatched roof, while providing shelter, also serves as an entry point for insects and small creatures. Inside these walls, life is a constant activity involving siblings, the demanding rhythm of work, and the natural cycles that govern everything. This modest beginning, as harsh as the fields your family cultivates, establishes expectations early. Childhood is brief. Survival requires contributions that youth would normally be exempt from, a lesson your parents impart through teaching endurance. Baptism holds significance beyond ceremony, representing a plea for divine protection against a world fraught with peril. The loss of an unbaptized child is a deeply felt fear. Therefore, as the priest's chants fade into your parents' whispered prayers, it creates a safety net of hope, offering protection from the unknown. These practices, rooted not in unquestioning faith, but in sharp awareness, mirror the urgency felt when preparing for winter or unpredictable harvests. Here, faith and practical needs are interwoven, defining the peasant perspective where spiritual and earthly realities coexist, providing strength to those burdened by them. Labor is not just an element of life, it is life itself, forming the context for every event from birth to burial. The sounds you grow up with include the lowing of oxen, the noise of wooden tools, and the constant call to work. Lying in the shadows of your crib, your lullabies are not melodic songs, but a symphony of work. Sounds that shape the air, like the familiar patterns left by a plow in stubborn soil. Even as a child, you absorb this surrounding energy, preparing for a future determined not by choice, but by the inherent circumstances of your birth. Your early days are spent confined within a single-roomed hut, cob walls protecting your family from the harshness outside. The floor is a cold expanse of mixed dirt and straw, offering a temporary and unyielding softness. The thatched roof allows moisture to enter during storms and provides shelter for small creatures. Yet within this setting, warmth is found in the presence of family, their voices rising like a fire against the cold. Luxury is found in simple pleasures, the laughter of a sibling, the rare comfort of a warm winter cloak. Community is crucial to peasant life, serving as the central point of existence. It is more than just a collection of homes. It is a living entity fueled by shared purpose. Birth, like daily work, happens within a collective embrace, with neighbors offering guidance and support. Mutual dependence is present in every aspect, from sharing tools to the collective effort needed for survival. Village life revolves around the cycles of festivals and religious events, highlighting collective endurance. A pervasive theme in all narratives is the threat of infant mortality. You become aware of a world where life is fragile, understanding each birth as a prayer tinged with anxiety. These realities profoundly impact relationships, emphasizing life's fragility, yet also its value. Each child who survives becomes a cherished treasure, prompting families to appreciate life's brevity in the depth of love. The language of labor, rhythmic and natural as breathing, surrounds you. The world communicates in unison, a collective expression of effort and survival. You become familiar with this environment, learning its rhythm through the feel of the earth. While many tasks await, a sense of belonging underlies each one, fostering a community bound by enduring struggles and shared successes. Ultimately, the church acts as the central point of life, shaping both spiritual and social structures. It defines early experiences, from the sounds of Mass to the reverence of rituals that mark life's progression. The church's influence spans generations, anchoring change within shared belief systems. Its chants and symbols resonate deeply, regardless of literacy, weaving personal and communal identity into the fabric of daily life, influencing those it guides in the communities they vitalize. In the medieval era, as soon as a child could walk, they joined the constant demands of labor alongside their parents. Childhood, with its focus on carefree play and learning, was largely a privilege for later periods. Peasant children grew up immersed in the daily rhythm of work, where their efforts were not compensated with allowances, but were essential for survival. Carrying water from a nearby stream was a fundamental task, repeated tirelessly each day. The effort of carrying sloshing buckets was an early introduction to life's demands. Water, vital yet burdensome, was used for numerous purposes: drinking, cooking, cleaning, and farming. Those young hands became accustomed, far too early, to such heavy loads, as each task was a form of education through practical experience. Herding geese provided another practical lesson. These noisy birds were valuable, providing eggs, meat, and feathers, and caring for them required alertness and quickness. Children's watchful eyes learned to move purposefully, directing geese safely away from forbidden areas, whether belonging to a neighbor or, even worse, the Lord's property. This responsibility for youngsters taught skills beyond simply managing geese, integrating them into the rhythm of village life where everyone's contribution was a vital part of the community's fabric. A subtle interplay between nature's requirements and human needs shaped every movement, with children learning early that being attentive was not merely a skill, but an inherent way of living. As they grew older, the importance of their labor increased. Young peasants transported firewood, its natural scent mixing with the sharp feel of bark against their skin. Whether bought or collected from forests, wood was essential, providing warmth for homes, cooking meals, and warding off winter's relentless cold. Carrying these logs was more than just a task. It was a demonstration of strength, requiring determination and steady resolve as a recurring theme in their early lives. By the age of 10, boys were often assigned the task of guiding plows, a significant step in their development. Their hands grew rough as the earth was turned over by the guiding blades, a physical interaction between person and soil, combining strength and patience into a close relationship dictated by the seasons and the need to survive. Bound not by personal choice but by social standing, the labor of peasants was intricately linked to the complex structure of the feudal system. The Lord held claim to your loyalty and your harvests, a reality as unyielding as the landscape itself. Labor became a form of payment, a tax demanded in sweat rather than money. Fields abundant at harvest time were for the manor's stores, not for your family. Any unwillingness to meet these demands was met with punishment, a stark reminder of your fixed and unchangeable place in society's order. Yet amidst this hard work, deeper meanings took root, connecting peasants in a shared experience of resilience and embedding a sense of community identity in their efforts and shared difficulties. Survival demanded clever adaptability beyond simply fulfilling feudal obligations. Peasant families diversified their activities whenever possible, engaging in beekeeping, cultivating small vegetable gardens, and even brewing basic ale. The practical reality of a barter economy blurred the lines between needs and desires, converting things like loaves of bread, milk, or homemade ale into commodities more reliable than coins. Foraging added an unauthorized but valuable supplement to their diet. Game hunted discreetly occasionally improved meals that otherwise relied on leftover scraps or gleanings from the Lord's harvest. Shaping survival out of scarcity was a process guided by practical skill, gracefully balancing innovation and necessity. The seasons served as both demanding taskmaster and guiding force, dictating the rhythm of life. Spring began with intense sowing, muscles aching with effort, and the cautious lessons from the previous year. Summer followed, hot and demanding, as sun-baked fields required constant care. A peak of activity arrived with autumn's urgent demands and the promise of celebration, simple but heartfelt, marking the end of the harvest. Winter then arrived, stark and difficult, with diminishing provisions alongside shorter daylight hours. A reminder of nature's cyclical rule, yet also emphasizing the anticipated return of spring. Quiet but essential, women's labor shaped domestic life, making the medieval home both a sanctuary and a place of production. From processing threads to creating cloth, they made necessary items that clothed and warmed their families. The family hearth, fueled by hard work, provided both nourishment and comfort. Beyond the home, they cared for livestock and gardens, integrating the production of food with community connections. Their often unacknowledged efforts were vital to the continuity of the village. Community bonds flourished and found strength among women, forming informal networks of support that wove their lives into a strong, though often overlooked, testament to the broader pattern of survival. Craftsmanship also demonstrated the versatility of peasants. Families refined skills over generations, spinning yarn, weaving fabric, and working with leather and wood, skills that brought vitality to the village economy. Each tool shaped, each piece of cloth woven, was a quiet assertion against being overlooked, a lasting mark left on that era, and a testament to creativity subtly overcoming monotony. Songs, those companions in toil, provided a melodic thread through the day's work, helping time pass and connecting people amidst the demanding tasks that required more than just physical strength. Each note echoed the pace of labor, a shared story expressed in harmony, resonating through fields and workshops alike. Songs offered more than just a break. They immortalized struggles and hopes, reflecting environments that blended the ordinary with stories told through melody, a subtle dialogue between human aspirations and earthly realities. Through enduring stories shared under the night sky, peasants fostered resilience. Legends and myths offered both comfort and caution. These narratives, rich in symbolism, provided a vital link of shared meaning and community, connecting generations in their timeless human experience. Although often obscured by history's larger narratives, the labor of peasants cultivated fields not only with grain, but also with the pathways for Europe's future. Their humility and dedication, often unrecognized, continue to resonate through the evolving patterns of time. In medieval times, life for a peasant was frequently defined by hunger, not merely the lack of food, but how it silently influenced every aspect of existence. The day might begin with a dark, coarse loaf of rye or barley bread, a humble staple that underlined the clear difference between the tables of the poor and the elaborate meals of the wealthy. With each bite came the persistent awareness of scarcity, a reminder that while the stomach might feel full, true satisfaction was rare. Their limited diet was consistent, based on what could be gathered and stored: onions, cabbage, and legumes. Each meal was an exercise in endurance, a practice in extracting nourishment from simple ingredients, accompanied by an underlying worry about future provisions. For many, this basic food barely masked the familiar pangs of hunger that shaped their days. The unpredictability of each meal was dictated by the changing seasons, their fortunes tied to the whims of the earth. Summer offered a brief period of fresh greens, and autumn, if they were fortunate, the promise of grain. But the line between having enough and having little was thin. The rare indulgence, such as butter or eggs, was uncommon for ordinary people, creating a cruel irony in a life where the disparity between what was needed and what was available was always evident. Meat, a symbol of luxury and wealth, appeared on their tables only during religious holidays or special celebrations, offering a temporary break from the ordinary cycle of consumption. These occasions became communal events, involving the slaughter of pigs and shared enjoyment, turning each precious piece of meat into an almost sacred experience. The smoky smell of roasting meat was a striking contrast to the usual sense of stored vegetables and straw that filled their simple homes. Feast days, though short, provided a glimpse of abundance. Beneath the communal joy of these events lay an undercurrent of sharp inequality, highlighting the difference between peasants and the nobles who dined well regardless of the season. Yet, even with the occasional feast, peasants regularly faced the harsh reality of winter. As the colder months enveloped the land, the threat of famine loomed large. The autumn harvest became a fragile memory, its promise fading as storage areas emptied. During these challenging times, famine was not just discussed but experienced in the bitter greens of boiled weeds and ingenious mixtures created out of desperation. The use of bark flour and foraged weeds served as a powerful testament to resilience forged in hardship. They became survivors by necessity, their inventiveness evident in the various methods of preservation they use, smoking, salting, and drying their limited abundance to last through the harsh winter. Preserved foods held the warmth of past summers, allowing hope to persist just long enough to outlast the darkness. Hunger spurred innovation, transforming meager offerings into sustenance, with gruel or soups becoming essential for survival. Nutritional deficiencies were an unavoidable aspect of medieval life, contributing to fatigue and weakness. Their effects were clearly visible in the worn bodies of the peasants. Without sufficient iron, their strength diminished, leaving bones fragile and spirits weary. Everything they did was affected by the constant lack of calories, making each task a test of endurance. Beyond individual survival, life in medieval communities meant relying on each other to withstand the pressures of hunger. Shared grain reserves and collective efforts to find food fostered unspoken bonds of mutual dependence. This interconnected existence demonstrated their fight against individual despair. Here, shared victories against hunger were not just a result of resourcefulness, but a strengthening of communal solidarity, where the rhythm of survival was a skill practiced among those who shared their experience. The threat of hunger, a persistent challenge for medieval peasants, left a lasting impact, shaping social structures and traditions. Patterns established by these cultural pressures echoed through time, influencing modern understanding of food security and sustainability. The medieval experience is deeply embedded in collective memory, linking stories of scarcity with new approaches to communal resilience. Looking back, we see not only endurance and resistance against nature, but also how these stories of survival resonate, providing a reminder of the cyclical nature of abundance, scarcity, and survival. In the medieval countryside, a home was a stark reminder of life's basic simplicity, a basic structure providing only fundamental protection from the weather. These dwellings, primarily built from wattle and daub, a mix of woven branches covered in mud or clay, were functional at best. Their roofs, made of straw or reeds, attempted to keep out the rain. Yet leaks were common problems, dripping continuously onto the dirt floor. This single room served multiple purposes, acting as a combined space for cooking, sleeping, and storing any limited supplies a family had gathered. Privacy was an unattainable luxury, with everyone sharing this small space and various activities overlapping. Stepping outside often meant entering another living area as well. The boundary between the inside and the vast outdoors was nearly non-existent. Life was communal, driven by necessity rather than comfort. A small garden, a valued piece of land, provided vegetables and a touch of color. Tasks like washing clothes, if done at all, were laboriously performed at a nearby stream, garments beaten clean against stones. This life spent outdoors created a community bound by shared difficulties where privacy was an unfamiliar concept and roles were determined by the demands of survival. Animals essential to this rural life added another layer of complexity. Whether it was the family cow, a few chickens, or a pig, these animals often shared the single living space. Their presence was not a sign of disorganization, but a practical decision, as their body heat provided essential warmth during the cold winters. This arrangement highlighted the interconnectedness of human and animal life. With livestock sharing the indoor space, the floor, typically covered in straw, quickly became dirty, harboring fleas and perpetuating a cycle of grime and the need to survive. Concerns about cleanliness took a back seat to the imperatives of survival, the smell of animals mixing with the sense of life and work. This merging of spaces was not just necessary, it symbolized the deep connection between humans and animals, an everyday testament to their interdependent existence. Central to this world was the hearth, the focal point of the home. It provided warmth and a place to cook, though with a drawback. Smoke, a constant presence, filled the air, penetrating every corner. Without chimneys, smoke swirled through the space, staining walls and irritating lungs. The room was often enveloped in haze, visibility as fleeting as clear air. The soot was a constant annoyance, and navigating through smoke added to the daily challenges, a test of endurance with every breath. Families devised solutions, such as crude vents or openings in the roof, to allow smoke to escape, demonstrating medieval resourcefulness in action. This adaptability was a key characteristic of a life defined by hardship and practicality. Underfoot, the floor was an uneven mix of earth and stones covered with rushes or straw. It offered a temporary and fragile comfort, eventually becoming a decaying mixture that released the earthy smell of decomposition with each step. Although these coverings needed replacing, the task was often delayed, reminding us of the hardiness developed through necessity. Life within these walls meant embracing the realities of daily existence, the rich, earthy smell of bread, baking over embers mixed with the tang of curing meats, if such luxuries were available. These smells, combined with smoke, became an olfactory record of survival and work. Living in close quarters was standard, with families closely grouped together. The single room served as both a place of work and rest. With limited space, straw mattresses on the floor were shared by adults and children. This closeness fostered family bonds, but also required patience, humor, and skill to navigate the stresses and conflicts of crowded living. Intimacy, both emotional and as a necessity for survival, thrived in this environment, creating a shared experience of challenges and celebrations. Seasons brought their own difficulties, with homes offering little protection against nature's cycles. Winter's harsh cold made warmth a precious resource, with fires barely holding back the creeping chill that seeped through every gap. Summer brought the opposite extreme, turning the home into an oven and forcing its occupants outside to escape the stifling heat. Ventilation was not a priority. Survival demanded adaptability as families adjusted to nature's whims, becoming skilled at embracing change as life required. When night arrived, the struggle continued with the challenge of lighting. Tallow candles, made from animal fat, provided a dim, flickering light, casting moving shadows on the walls. Their strong smell filled the air, a testament to the ingenuity of using byproducts for essential needs. Without candles or lamps, the glow of the dying fire became the last source of light, teaching a harmony with natural rhythms. Daily life required creativity in using space. With only one room, space had to be multi-purpose. Beams overhead served as shelves for essential items, with every item having its specific place and function. Ladders leaning against walls became storage areas, holding seasonal produce or supplies. Clever arrangements showed the creativity born of necessity, with every inch demonstrating the medieval peasant's resourcefulness. These homes were more than just shelter. They were a story written in dirt and smoke, a chapter of history speaking of endurance, simplicity, and the unwavering determination to survive in a world where the boundary between stability and chaos was as thin as the walls themselves. Marriages in medieval peasant life were frequently arranged out of practical necessity rather than romantic love. In a world where survival depended on every decision, marriage was a strategy for families to strengthen their economic security and labor force. Parents took on the role of arranging unions based on dowries, livestock, and land. With little consideration for personal feelings, the willingness to work hard, have children, and manage a household was far more important than romantic desires. However, even within these practical arrangements, genuine connections sometimes developed amidst the demands of daily life. Shared difficulties could lead to companionship that went beyond the transactional nature of the union. turning marriages into partnerships built on mutual respect and shared successes. The wedding ceremony, simple compared to the lavish events of the nobility, was still an important occasion. Held at the village church and overseen by a priest, it was a communal event steeped in religious tradition, confirming the couple's union before God and their neighbors. The simple fare of bread, ale, and perhaps a small piece of meat emphasized the festive spirit of the occasion, making it a rare moment of celebration for the community. These ceremonies were filled with local customs, from the exchange of rings to the symbolic covering of the bride with a veil, reflecting the community's approval of the marriage. Yet the underlying reality remained serious. This celebration marked the beginning of a shared life filled with hard work, highlighting the resilience needed to endure their difficult rural existence. Life within a peasant marriage demanded more than emotional ties. It revolved around managing the household's economic burdens. The family functioned as a unit for labor and financial activity, with the survival of everyone dependent on each member's contribution. Women were responsible for domestic tasks, managing the home, caring for small livestock, and making clothing, while men handled farming and building work. Practicality dictated this division. However, survival often required both partners to adapt and share responsibilities during crises such as failed harvests or illness. Children, too, were involved in labor from a young age, binding the family in a strong interdependence that went beyond simple family connections. Childbirth, fraught with danger and uncertainty, was both a blessing and a risk for peasant families. With the threat of death always present during pregnancies, women relied on midwives and experienced community members rather than medical professionals for deliveries. Despite high mortality rates, childbirth was a vital event, promising future help for the family's labor-intensive life. Each new birth was a sign of hope and a testament to the community's resilience. Yet the emotional impact on women could be devastating. Grief for lost infants and mothers was a common experience, though often endured quietly, with bereaved families quickly returning to work. This contrast between fear and necessity drove the cycle of life and death, shaping peasant existence. The haunting presence of infant mortality cast a shadow over family life, with nearly half of all children not surviving past early childhood. Disease, malnutrition, and a lack of medical knowledge were persistent enemies, leaving families with limited options. In the face of such tragedy, parents mourned with quiet dignity, as public expressions of sorrow were uncommon. Instead, grief was integrated into the fabric of daily life, with community support offering a degree of collective resilience. Loss reinforced the fragility of life, weaving acceptance into the cultural outlook of peasant society. In a world ruled by survival, these poignant realities were an essential part of a broader understanding of life's temporary nature. Against this difficult background, the bond between parents and children remained a powerful force. Children were both dependent and future contributors, and parental love was intertwined with the practical needs of survival. From a young age, children learned the skills essential for the family's economic survival, with traditional knowledge passed down through generations. Despite the harsh realities, moments of warmth and happiness existed in shared stories, simple games, and community celebrations. Parents balanced discipline with nurturing, striving to instill hope and resilience in their children. Love was demonstrated through providing for and protecting them, an enduring force amidst the challenges of peasant life. The complexity of sexuality among peasants was influenced by religious teachings, societal norms, and practical needs. The church's authority extended to sexual behavior, which was primarily viewed in terms of procreation. Each child represented a potential labor force, but also put a strain on resources, requiring a delicate balance between religious principles and the practicalities of survival. Nevertheless, traditional beliefs and basic birth control methods were discreetly practiced by those attempting to manage family size. Communal living often reduced privacy, fostering a frank understanding of human relationships. Peasant sexuality was a complex interplay of personal desires, religious restrictions, and the tangible realities of rural life. Despite strict rules against relationships outside of marriage, human desires often led people down paths beyond marital fidelity. Adultery and other relationships, though condemned by the church, did occur and were pursued with personal risk. The consequences varied from public penance to being ostracized, with social standing hanging in the balance in close-knit communities. Yet emotional dissatisfaction, economic necessity, or simple attraction led some down this difficult path. Illegitimacy was evidence of secret relationships, highlighting the ongoing tension between individual wants and societal expectations. This added a layer of complexity to the already intricate fabric of peasant life, blending secrets with community vigilance. Divorce was rare in medieval times, with few legal options for separation available in a society governed by religious doctrine. Separation, when it happened, was usually informal, prompted by unfulfilled obligations or mutual agreement. Such decisions left individuals vulnerable, emphasizing the essential interdependence required for survival. Marriage for peasants was a partnership formed by necessity, and enduring within its limitations required adaptability and perseverance. In the demanding environment of medieval life, marriage embodied both love and labor, strengthening or fracturing under the constant pressures of daily existence. In medieval times, when the sun rose over the fields you worked, it shone upon land that was not yours to own. Bound by the strict requirements of feudal obligation, your life followed a path determined long before you were born. Born into service, you were as much a part of the soil as the crops that grew from it. The Lord above owned vast areas of land, and by extension, he owned the labor you provided, a continuous cycle that defined your very existence. Each season brought its own challenges. Yet beneath the earthy smell of freshly turned soil lay a truth as unyielding as the seasons. Everything that grew increased the Lord's wealth, not your own. Your labor was not yours, nor was the result of your labor. Your identity and value were closely linked to this landscape of hard work. In exchange for his protection and a small plot of land to live on, you gave up not only your labor, but a portion of each harvest, a demand supported by ancient custom. However, it was not just grain or wool that bound you. These were simply symbols of a deeper relationship. The Lord's expectations extended beyond taxes. He could call upon your services whenever he wished, whether for building, fighting, or serving. A failed harvest tested both your hunger and your ability to cope. As the demands did not lessen with misfortune, the threat of penalties, perhaps the taking of a chicken or something more severe, was a constant reminder that ensured compliance and highlighted the precarious balance on which your life hung. Living in the shadow of the manor, each day you faced a physical representation of this power imbalance. The Lord's manor stood above your simple dwelling, a fortress against enemies and a daily reminder of your social position. Built not just from stone and wood, but from the hierarchy it upheld, the manor was a busy place with skilled workers and activities, a dynamic institution on whose smallest workings your sweat and effort depended. In stark contrast to your simple life, the manor stood as a grand display, speaking in hushed tones and echoes, reminding everyone within its walls of their place. The system that trapped you was as much about the customs that defined the land as it was about the established laws that echoed through the ages. Ancient rules governed your every movement, literally tying your steps to those ancestral fields. Bold attempts to escape the bonds of serfdom were met with severe consequences. The social structure, built on duty and fear, ensured your return to the existing order. Whether through public shame or more severe punishments, rebellion, though risky, was not entirely absent from this story of servitude. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381 is a notable example when desperation turned into a defiant uprising. Ordinary people like you took to the streets in large numbers, their voices raised against the oppressive burden of unfair taxes and obligations. However, while courageous, such actions led to swift and brutal retaliation, demonstrating both the unwavering desire for justice and the lengths to which those in power would go to maintain control. Each uprising, though quickly suppressed, sowed seeds of persistent unrest beneath the surface. Within this power structure was the role of the bailiff, the Lord's representative and a symbol of authority. His visits were both expected and unpredictable, each bringing either relief or anxiety. Responsible for upholding the Lord's rules, the bailiff's actions could range from understanding the peasant's plight to mercilessly enforcing dues. He was a figure operating at the intersection of practical needs and authority, and his attitude often influenced your collective circumstances. Beyond your obligations to your Lord, the church also claimed a portion of your yield. Spiritual tithes demanded a tenth of your harvest, a commitment as binding as any secular tax, and arguably more sacred. These contributions were considered an expression of divine gratitude, extending across fields and monasteries alike, creating a dual set of expectations, both worldly and spiritual. Your relationship with the church, while often a source of comfort, added complexity in managing these dual loyalties. In life's constant rhythm, working together strengthened bonds within your community, forming the basis of survival in both difficult and prosperous times. Working together bound your fates as tightly as any knot, a necessary collaboration against the continuous backdrop of shared labor and hardships endured. The effort of working together included moments of companionship shared through songs and stories exchanged across the fields. Justice, in its form at the time, was administered in the manorial court, an event less focused on fairness than on reinforcing who held power. Here, disputes were heard and decided, mostly in favor of maintaining the existing order. Yet occasionally, there was a glimpse of fairness, a rare moment where justice felt genuine. Through these established structures, the legacy of feudal law provided evidence of the powerful and enduring structures of class and custom, a somber acknowledgement of a hierarchy as permanent as the stones of the manor itself. In the medieval world, illness was a constant and silent threat present in every aspect of a peasant's life. Without the benefits of modern sanitation or an understanding of germs, danger was inherent in the very air, water, and food they consumed. In crowded, close-knit villages, disease spread rapidly. Sewage often flowed nearby, contaminating precious water sources and homes with invisible threats. A cough or a sneeze was not merely a minor inconvenience. It was a warning of potential chaos that could disrupt lives. For many, sickness was a feared whisper lurking in the shadows, planting a fear that never fully disappeared. When illness struck, it could destabilize not just individuals but entire communities. A single farmer confined to bed with a fever at a crucial time could jeopardize the entire harvest, threatening his family's survival and causing concern for the local lord about his own supplies. With limited medical knowledge, peasants relied on collective wisdom, sharing remedies like closely guarded secrets. If a poultice from one village seemed effective, or an herbal brew from another appeared to alleviate symptoms, these methods spread as vital sources of hope. In facing these challenges, there was a remarkable resilience, as peasants confronted disease not with passive acceptance, but with a determination to hold on to every bit of health, as if seizing small victories from the clutches of fate. Of all the threats posed by disease, none cast a longer shadow than the plague, a dark harbinger of despair. The Black Death swept across Europe in the 14th century, an unstoppable force that mocked any sense of safety. People collapsed in the streets, their bodies marked by black boils, while death carts moved through villages with grim determination. Despite its terrifying nature, the plague tested and, in unexpected ways, strengthened community bonds. While some fled, others found resolve, driven by a mix of love, duty, and religious belief. The wealthy might escape to more distant locations, but the plague was an equalizer, uniting farmhands and lords alike in the shared experience of facing impending death. In these raw moments, unity became both a vital support and a quiet act of resistance against despair. In a world without modern medicine, remedies were based on tradition and superstition. Herbal remedies were widely used. Villages prepared concoctions of garlic, leeches, and vinegar, each more an act of hopeful tradition than scientific accuracy. Nature was revered as a powerful healer, with each plant holding the potential key to survival. But when plants and poultices were insufficient, faith played a role, attributing illnesses to divine will or spiritual imbalance. Amulets, charms, and prayers were part of their approach to healing, weaving together a tapestry of health, magic, and faith. For peasants, these practices, though foreign to modern understanding, offered a sense of control in a world where control was scarce. Childbirth was a particularly dangerous transition, balanced between hope and tragedy. Midwives developed their knowledge through experience, using their skills to ease labor pains amidst cries and traditional chants. Despite their care, infections were common, turning moments of celebration into mournful occasions. Neighbors often stepped in, offering assistance with quiet strength, making the birthing process a communal effort. The constant danger highlighted life's fragility. Yet each birth was an act of defiance against the ever-present threat, an act of courage in a reality marked by uncertainty. Fevers, too, were not simply illnesses but perceived as destructive forces, seen as tangible signs of imbalance or spiritual attack. Fevers created a sense of urgency. Villages turned to herbs like feverfew and sage, and to prayers as defenses against invisible enemies. Drinking water contaminated by waste worsened their situation, making even simple purification an unattainable luxury. Peasants navigated these dangers with determined resolve, each encounter a testament to their resilience against constant hardship. Illness had spiritual dimensions, with disease often interpreted as divine displeasure or a result of witchcraft. Pilgrimages to holy sites became acts of hope. Churches, though basic, offered places of healing where prayers sought to connect the physical with the spiritual. Faith illuminated their darkest hours, integrating spiritual and physical well-being in ways essential to their resilience. Leprosy was a social calamity, marking individuals with physical symptoms and social stigma. Misunderstood as divine punishment, sufferers were ostracized, enduring a form of living death in leper colonies. Despite the fear, leper houses, often connected to churches, offered comfort, highlighting a duality of fear and compassion. This complex response reflected tensions in the societal attitudes, underscoring humanity within the harsh codes of medieval life. Malnutrition, a hidden adversary, was a contributing factor to many illnesses. Diets primarily consisting of bread and pottage led to deficiencies, weakening immune systems, and making people more susceptible to disease. Famines intensified these difficulties, driving families to desperate levels of scarcity. Despite limited resources and shared hunger, creative survival strategies wove resilience into their ability to endure. Amidst scarcity, the community united against disease, sharing labor, food, and prayers. Women who held medical knowledge often became crucial healers, strengthening community bonds and going beyond simple survival. Medieval peasants lived under the constant threat of disease with quiet bravery. In a time that now seems distant, their daily resistance against uncontrolled forces laid the foundation for a future they could not have imagined. Their lives demonstrate that history is shaped not only by major events, but also by the perseverance of those who endured extreme difficulties, building the future from the struggles of their present. At the core of medieval life, where labor was unending and hope was scarce, the rhythm of holy days provided breaks in the monotony. Peasants lived according to the Catholic Church's calendar, which included both periods of feasting and fasting, connecting the divine with everyday life. In this demanding balance between work and faith, holy days were more than just religious observances. They were moments when the divine seemed to intervene to break the routine. Winter's grip was softened by the 12 days of Christmas or Yule, where laughter defied the cold as families gathered around crackling fires, sharing modest meals of cured meats and sweetened bread, transforming their austere lives into something temporarily brighter. These festive periods offered respites where hardships were momentarily forgotten, not just through religious devotion, but through the shared warmth of the community. But just as feasts provided escape, fasts brought a return to harsh realities. Lent, the most demanding period, involved 40 days of abstaining from meat and often dairy. Yet ironically, fasting often mirrored the daily struggles of peasants. While the church mandated a season of penance, it unintentionally reflected the scarcity that peasants frequently experienced. The community accepted these periods with a mix of resignation and hope, a prayer for a plentiful harvest whispered amidst the familiar reality of need. However, before the solemnity settled over the land, Carnival erupted in a wild, chaotic celebration. It was a brief release from the constraints of labor, where peasants wore masks and pretended to be royalty, replacing seriousness with laughter. Streets were filled with jugglers and musicians, their lively ballads and the sound of wooden cups raised in defiance of duty filling the air. In these moments, peasants caught a glimpse of a world turned upside down, indulging in lightheartedness as a form of resistance to their demanding lives. As winter's hold weakened, May Day signaled the renewal of life, a dance of hope around the maypole. Young people wove brightly colored ribbons in a joyful, swirling embrace of springtime promises. The air was filled with the scent of fresh flowers mixed with sweat, the sound of feet on fertile ground echoing with laughter. For peasants, it was a direct connection to the earth, a fleeting joy taken from the hardships ahead, reinforcing bonds made stronger by shared happiness and labor. Then came the harvest festivals, celebrating the year's arduous work and the earth's bounty. The completion of the harvest was a collective sigh of relief. Tables were laden with barley, apples, and the rare slaughter of pigs. Corn dolls were created, intended to appease the spirit of the harvest and ensure fertility for the following year, while folk games and harvest dinners celebrated the community's shared relief and camaraderie. As the night continued with singing and dancing, peasants celebrated the fragile success of survival, aware of nature's unpredictable favor, but ever hopeful in its cycles. Throughout these periods of change, the medieval church served as the village's heart, more than just a spiritual center, but a hub of community life. On Sundays, families dressed in their best tunics, attending Mass as both a religious duty and a social gathering. Processions and parades lit by torches showcased a faith rooted in tradition as the community bound itself together through shared rituals echoing through time, transforming villages into vibrant tapestries of belonging. Meanwhile, laws regulating clothing aimed to reinforce class distinctions through fashion and food. Yet holy days offered rare opportunities for peasants to cross these boundaries. Feast days blurred these distinctions, with tables laden with whatever could be gathered, offering a tantalizing taste of extravagance usually denied by the laws meant to maintain privilege. Irony was present beneath this feasting, a brief act of rebellion against societal constraints, allowing peasants to experience the fringes of inequality's limits. In this mix of faith and revelry, pilgrimages offered a form of escape. These journeys, both spiritual and physical, promised a break from the fields and homes. For the peasant, it was an adventure to majestic cathedrals or simple shrines, seeking divine intervention and connecting with strangers along muddy paths. Stories of miraculous healings were exchanged as pilgrims found fellowship in the shared discomforts that transformed them from village-bound laborers into participants in a wider community of faith. In this constant cycle, faith was a fundamental support amidst the contradictions of feast and famine. Holy days provided moments of joy in the face of scarcity, a paradoxical balance where faith sustained even when food was scarce, anchoring the peasant spirits in a divine narrative larger than themselves. Through the holy days of the past, echoes of those traditions resonate even today, reminding us that despite the passage of time, the essence of human celebration, reverence, and resilience remains our enduring heritage. In the medieval era, the concept of living a long life was almost mythical. People lived in a world where reaching the age of 40 was a notable achievement, and many did not survive beyond childhood. With medical knowledge as elusive as a distant star, a fever or a minor injury could quickly end a life. This harsh reality forced even the youngest inhabitants to adapt quickly. Boys were working as soon as they were physically able, and girls were mastering household skills before pursuing other aspirations. Each year lived was a victory against an unyielding world. Life existed on a fragile edge, with death not a distant presence but an everyday companion. The solemn sound of church bells marked the passing of another soul. Yet the living had little time for extended mourning. Under the vast and indifferent skies, peasants filled their brief days with laughter, love, and labor, leaving their mark on the soil with every step. Their stories were not written in grand books, but were indelibly carved into the earth they cared for, as permanent as the stones beneath their feet. Labor was life, deeply connected to the identity of those who worked the land. Peasants, the foundation of agrarian society, derived sustenance from the land while simultaneously giving it vitality. The nobility might have been preoccupied with power and politics, but it was the consistent labor of peasants that provided food for kingdoms and filled storage houses. Each calloused hand, each drop of sweat, served a greater purpose, supporting not just a family but an entire civilization. Fields of grain, impressive cities, and towering cathedrals had their origins in the mud and effort of anonymous builders who would never dine at the tables they helped prepare. Peasants were not architects in the traditional sense, but their hands were the architects of potential. The castles that rise on the European skyline owe their existence to simple tools and faces, weathered by the elements, forming a workforce that defied both time and weather. Under the guidance of architects, they lifted each stone into place, transforming aspirations into reality. When conflict arose, these strongly built fortresses became places of safety, imposing structures in contrast to the simple homes peasants lived in. Yet, ironically, it was the effort of these unseen builders that made such protection possible, combining their labor with the Lord's vision to solidify a living civilization in stone. As peasants worked the land, they unintentionally contributed to the growth of bustling medieval cities. Market days were their arena, where rural labor was transformed into urban vitality. Goods were exchanged, stimulating trade and sending the lifeblood of progress through cobbled streets. From humble gatherings, towns grew and expanded into centers of commerce and art, offering new opportunities for those seeking an alternative to farming. The transition from agricultural labor to urban dynamism was facilitated by the very hands that cultivated life, weaving the economic foundation from which medieval cities emerged. Knights and kings, figures of legend and tradition, represented only one aspect of the full medieval experience. Behind the shining armor stood a group of unrecognized peasants, unseen yet essential. They fed the horses, maintained weapons, and planted the seeds for the battle victories achieved by knights. While nobles shared stories of bravery, peasants continued their timeless cycle of labor, a silent harmony to which every royal ceremony owed its existence. The strength of medieval society was built as much by the hands working in the dirt as by the gleam of swords in sacred halls. Peasantry may not have written scholarly works or created artistic masterpieces, but their labor provided a foundation for progress to build upon. They cultivated fields whose bounty sustained both individuals and empires, provided food for the sanctuaries where monks preserved ancient knowledge, and mined the metal that formed the church bells. Their tangible contributions were the unrecognized groundwork upon which cultural and scientific advancements were established. Through countless harvests and seasonal tasks, they supported the quiet thinkers in monasteries, contributing to the development of new ideas with each field they harvested. Innovation gradually entered medieval life, as peasants adapted to change, always seeking ways to ease their burdens. With tools like the heavy plow and crop rotation, they initiated a quiet transformation across the land. By adopting these changes, peasants didn't just increase yields. They planted the seeds of shifts that reshaped societies. Through conversations in markets and stories shared at festivals, methods evolved, each improvement a small step creating ripples that extended across centuries. In their persistence, they were unintentional agents of progress within a world that seemed timeless and resistant to change. When you walk through impressive castles or soaring cathedrals, imagine the rough hands that placed each stone. Beyond the grandeur stood peasants who dedicated their energy to creating lasting tributes to shared humanity. For them, cathedrals were more than just architectural wonders. They were sanctuaries and places of gathering, serving both temporal and divine purposes. They built more than structures. They cemented a legacy, a lasting mark on the landscape that continues to echo in silent tribute to lives lived with quiet dignity. Ultimately, as each peasant was laid to rest in unmarked graves, their legacy persisted within the structure of kingdoms and the rhythm of societies. From the simplest plowed field to towering arches, every anonymous life contributed its unseen strength to the tapestry of history. Their stories are embedded in cobblestones and whisper through ancient plazas, enduring in the lively sounds of market squares and the quiet of the countryside. With each passing day, their spirit echoes, a testament not just to a civilization built, but to a timeless narrative of humanity itself. Thank you for joining us on this journey through medieval life. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating stories from history.